It's mid-October in St. Louis, technically early fall, but with late summer weather. It's still Oktoberfest time, so today we thought we'd talk about beer, craft beer, mainstream beer. Hello, I'm George Mahey, and with me is my always hopped up on life co-host.
This is Cheryl Bear.
I'd get you every
Looking
time.
forward to this, George.
And among other things, along with our resident beer expert, Jordan Palmer, who we'll talk to, we'll get into beer news that even non-beer drinkers will be interested in. It's like, if you like this beverage, drink that beer. I think it'll be really interesting. We're here to tell you that you don't have to be a so-called beer drinker to appreciate beer. Then in today's micro rant, we'll discuss beer snobs. But before we get into all that, it's what we can't stop thinking about this week. And Cheryl, you've got some news that we all can use.
This is something that I think everyone will benefit from because I get asked multiple times a week probably, how do I get into Wright's Tavern?
You can't.
How do I get into Louis?
It's hard.
Right? Keep going. How do I get into Pavilion?
Tough.
Exactly. And I am here to tell you it is possible. It is possible to get into these places without staying up until midnight and treating it like an Eras Tour ticket. You can absolutely get into these places by using Resi's Notify function. I had the good fortune of getting 2 reservations to Louis in the past week and 1 reservation to Wright's Tavern. No strings pulled, no nothing. All I did was I went to their websites, I clicked the reservations link, it took me to Resi, and you select how many people and what day you're looking for. And it will tell you there are no reservations available.
So they laugh at you.
Exactly. They laugh
Right.
at you. Why are you trying to get a reservation to these places within 3 days' notice? But there's a little button on there that you can push that says notify. And what you do is click that button. You give them a time range for when you're willing to dine. Let's say between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. And you give them your email and your phone number, and then you just click submit. And as people cancel, which does happen, you will get a little ding on your phone that notifies you there may be a table available. You click that, it takes you immediately to their reservation platform, and you secure your reservation. I got a Saturday evening table at Wright's Tavern for 3 people within 24 hours notice. It is brilliant, and I think people need to know this is possible.
One pro tip, though, you got to be quick on the draw.
Yes, you do. It has to be instantaneous. Basically, the second your phone dings, you have to click submit and secure the reservation. But I think more people should take advantage of this because it's a way to get into these places.
That's great news. Mine's a little bit more simple. I was at Scarlett's Wine Bar this week, and I saw something that I've never seen, but apparently the owner, Jean-Christophe Comte, has been doing it since he bought Scarlett's a year and a half ago. He's got these tabletop clear wine bags. It's just the coolest thing, and it takes up 0 space. These are sturdy, and they've got little handles on them. And he said he saw them 15 years ago in France where bistro tables are quite small.
Sure.
And you need stuff like that. There's no room for wine buckets. I just asked all about them. I said, this is so cool. I want one. He said, you get them on Amazon, but don't buy the cheap ones because they leak. You can spend $1 or you can spend $15. He goes, buy the $15
Okay.
ones. That's what I do. And you can use them to hold wine or transport wine, or you could hold or transport a large format bottle of beer,
Oh, wow.
which conveniently segues into today's subject. See what I did there? But before we get to that, a quick reminder about the Dining Out newsletter. It's your weekly fix for restaurant reviews and first looks and openings, closings, opinions, and also exclusive offers like half-price gift cards, which we lovingly dubbed Bite Club, and they're only available to subscribers. So head to stlmag.com and click on the newsletter subscription tab to sign up. Okay, on to our featured guest. Jordan Palmer worked at KSDK from 1995 to 2020, quite a long run. He's a 3-time Emmy Award winner and produced everything from news to specials during that time, and created Show Me St. Louis, among others, and that show's still on the air. He started KSDK.com in 2001. He won 3 Edward R. Murrow Awards for journalistic and website excellence. I know, there's more.
I'm shaking my head here.
He's been married for 25 years. He's the father of 2 college-age students, and that's why he's here. He's a beer aficionado. He created and curated a beer blog, and that's 10 years ago. He's responsible for our craft beer newsletter, and he also writes for the Jewish Light. And Jordan says he has, and I quote, an incredible and vast knowledge of useless information and is the grandson of a Cleveland bootlegger. How about that? That's the most awesome resume.
Dazzling.
I want to shake your hand and preemptively thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It is so wonderful to be here and be part of the St. Louis Magazine family.
Yes, indeed. So let's just start at the beginning, and we'll try to keep this brief. Where did this whole love affair with beer start with you?
Really, at Channel 5, I was moving up into management and sort of losing my creative flair after I produced Show Me St. Louis and all the shows, and I was managing, and I was looking for an outlet for creativity, and Drink314 was my outlet. It really was actually, it began as Drink TV, couldn't get that going, so I just decided to write, and 11 years later, I'm still writing about beer, I'm writing about whiskey. I try to write about wine. I don't know as much about wine, but I do give it a shot. And I found a little bit of a local audience. I do this as a passion project, but since coming over to St. Louis Magazine, it's really picked up. So it has just been what I love to write about, tell the stories of the brewers and the beer. And I don't pretend to be an expert on anything. I just am telling you what I think. And people seem to have enjoyed it.
I thought you were going to say that you were in management, so you needed a lot of drinks.
I thought that was coming too.
Probably true as much as anything else, but really, I didn't even realize that I needed that creative outlet till much later, but it was really what it was. I needed to create something. I'm a creative producer is what I now call myself, or look back at those days. I wasn't the line producer. I had folks who really did the timing. I was the idea guy.
So craft beer has been a thing for several decades, and it's October, so we're talking about Oktoberfest. And craft beer, coincidentally, has been in the news just this week. And let's address the elephant in the room. It's on everybody's minds, even non-beer drinkers. It's the 4-word prophecy. And Cheryl, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, is craft beer dead? That is something that I've heard a lot of chatter about. This New York Times article that just came out over the weekend referenced it. I think people are talking about it. They're seeing breweries here in St. Louis close. It feels like, is anyone drinking beer anymore? Is anyone drinking craft beer? What on earth is going on? Should we be panicked for our beloved local breweries, or how do you see this moment?
Craft beer is not dead.
Mm-hmm.
Craft beer is going through a transitional phase. And I'm going to use a television analogy. When I started KSK.com in 2001, as George wrote, I was getting a lot of resistance from traditional television people who were telling me this is going to hurt television. Television could not survive the digital age. Well, people kept saying that television was going to be dead in 10 years, and that was 2001. Television is not dead. Digital is surviving. This is one of those cases where you can have multiple lines or parallel lines of business coming at the same time, and everyone can be successful. What I think is happening, and it's happening nationwide, not just in St. Louis, customers, their palates are changing. Spirits and ready-to-drink alcohol cocktails have become very popular. White Claw is a very popular beverage, and it really did hit during COVID. And the ease of having these canned beverages has changed the palate wishes of the customer base. Craft beer, which was dominating and all that, is now finding its plateaued, and it's now reshuffling itself. In a lot of cases, you're going to find breweries who overextended, breweries who maybe weren't making really great beer. The cream is rising to the top, so to speak. So I don't fear for the industry. I think that creativity will always win out, but you are seeing a true redistribution of what you're going to have in front of you from the craft beer positions of less breweries possible, less distribution. There's a lot of math in this. And I've spoken to a lot of breweries around St. Louis about this, even before some of the recent closings. So there's a lot going on in their brains, and it's also a business, don't forget. So they're encompassing the exact same economic situations that every other industry is. So no, craft beer is not dead.
So it hasn't collapsed. This is more, they call it in the stock market, a correction. Is that an accurate term?
That is a fantastic way of putting it. There is a correction. We're even seeing it in the cases of styles. IPAs, which dominated the markets for almost 10 years, are finding themselves slightly out of favor with some craft beer drinkers who are returning to what I call clean beer, clear beer.
What does that mean?
It's the lagers. It's the kind of beers that this St. Louis beer market was built on. Anheuser-Busch built the beer market. Every craft beer brewery in this town is on the shoulders of Anheuser-Busch, like it or not. And that beer that they made, those lagers, those pilsners, those clean beers are very difficult to make, but they are what the palates of a lot of Americans are rediscovering as the beer market ages. Those IPAs get very heavy in your belly. You drink less of them and you're full longer. So the clean beer is lower alcohol usually, not always, but usually. And the flavor palette just is clean, and it allows you to what they call session the beers. You can drink more for longer.
And, these clean beers, a lot of people don't understand. I didn't understand. I thought these craft beers, these complicated IPAs were just that, complicated. And you just said it. These clean beers take longer to make. They're more complicated to make, and they're less forgiving. You've got to be a better beer brewer to make a lager beer.
I was at a dinner at Anheuser-Busch years ago, and one of the head brewers was talking about how difficult it was to make sure that if the St. Louisan went to Tokyo, that the beer in Tokyo, a Budweiser beer in Tokyo, was exactly the same.
Wow.
That takes a lot of skill to make the same beer multiple times in different places. He also explained that there's no mistakes in lager. You can't have mistakes. In a lot of cases, some brewers would say that the IPA movement came about because IPA is just filled with hops. And what a lot of brewers will do is, if they make a mistake,
right,
they'll throw some hops in.
Cover it with
Cover
hops.
it with hops. So lager is a clean slate, thus the term clean beer that I really have heard other people say, but that's just the easiest way for me to describe it. You can't fake it, and it's truly an artistic beer. You cannot hide your flubs. If you do, you're going to be called out for it by beer lovers who understand the complexities of how hard that is and what good flavor is. So yeah, lagers and the pilsners and the other clean beer, especially this time of month, very popular.
Well, and I'm so glad you said that, because I feel like I've noticed, at least anecdotally, that you're seeing these lager bars, and I'm thinking of Great Heart Brewing. I'm thinking of Little Lager, places that are specializing in this type of beer. I always felt that I was shut out of the craft beer industry because I do not like IPA. And I felt like it was always such, not to sound crass, but craft beer felt like a pissing contest. How hoppy can I make this beer? How aggressive can I make it? How esoteric and unapproachable. And it really shut those of us out who don't respond well to that flavor profile. I find it very bitter and, like I was saying, overly aggressive. And I always felt that meant that I had unsophisticated taste, at least in beer. So are you seeing this? Do you feel like it makes beer more inclusive for people? What do you think this, I don't want to say trend, but this new movement is doing to the craft beer industry?
Well, I think it's thinning the herd a bit too. I do think that brewers are listening to their customers. In the case of the lager bars, this was a new phenomenon. I really had never heard of anyone doing something as specific as a beer bar dedicated to one style or a family of styles. But I will say that the marketing and the timing probably couldn't be any better. I mean, what those guys have done, and they're growing, they're just expanding for their second location, is they are bringing what most people would call the beer purists, the people who've never abandoned the clean beer. Giving them a place to go. Not that they didn't have places to go. You could always find a lager on most anybody's beer menu. But now these people have the focus of an entire bar. As small as Little Lager is, it makes it even a little more fun and exclusive. If you get a seat, you were there on time. It's a pretty neat club experience if you get yourself in. And the way they do their pours, it's a very European style. The foam is a very popular thing, but you didn't hear anybody doing that before. So I think there is a little bit of luck with the timing, but clearly they have their finger on the heartbeat of the beer drinker.
And I guess my comment to that was, what took you so long, guys? Because the top 5 beers, probably the top 8 beers in America, are light lagers by sales, right? That's not an exaggeration.
A lot of it possibly was just the creativity of doing something different. And a lot of brewers all across the country were really hopped up. But then again, you also had them experimenting with not just hops, but stouts and sours. Then there were dessert stouts. The
That's a good
style,
point. You
yeah.
don't want to take on Anheuser-Busch
You just
necessarily.
you really were looking for other avenues, but as most things do, it came full circle. So really, the lagers and the clean beer is where they're at. But again, that's just part of the progression of any business. So I don't want anyone to think that what these brewers were doing was bad. They really were just going through their cycles of artists. This is where they are as an artist. They're wanting to make these kind of beers. Narrow Gauge is very famous for their IPAs and will continue to do so. But even they are having new flavors. They're on our list for some of the best stouts. So everyone is broadening their horizons, widening their palate. But really, this is a bunch of artists who are figuring out what the consumer wants to look at, or in this case, drink.
In the past, you and I have talked about how a lot of times people ask for the most popular beers in America by name because it's just shorthand. They're not specifically ordering a Bud Light because they want a Bud Light. They're just referencing that they want a light, easy drinking beer, and Bud Light happens to be the word. Kind of like if you ask for a Kleenex, not a tissue. So I'm wondering if you're noticing that something in craft beer in St. Louis, from a local perspective, is allowed to have that kind of namesake.
Absolutely. Even about 5 years ago, I was really noticing in my writing and in responses from readers, certain beers that were creeping into what I call that Bud Light effect, where you just ordered it without even thinking. And locally, I was watching Citywide become that.
Mhm.
I watched Urban Chestnut's Wickle become that. Civil Life's
Brown Ale.
Brown Ale
Yep.
was, it was a go-to. And brown ale is not one of those beers that everyone loves. So for it to be on that level, that just means how good Civilized Brown Ale is. And then with Schlafly, I'll give Schlafly a little more credit because Schlafly came in 92, well before most of the craft beer here. They really are the grandfather. Their pale ale, which was my first craft beer, is still, to me, the king of the other Bud Lights.
Mhm.
So those four, anywhere you go, are probably going to be on most restaurants' beer menus. They're probably in every grocery store and bottle shop. So those beers, and probably some others really new to the scene, would be Blue Jay's Little Birds. I'm seeing that becoming just the next beer. Now, you can't find it as easily, but I'm seeing the comments from beer lovers talking about beer the way they used to talk about Bud Light with Blue Jay and some of these other beers.
Is it a comparable beer to Bud Light?
It is a lager. It's what I would call more of a Jamaican style lager, more like a red stripe, but it is totally unique in its own. Blue Jay is really pushing lagers as well. They are a lager brewery in a lot of ways. They don't market it like little lagers as the only thing they do, but they are really at the forefront of creating great lagers.
Are you a pumpkin beer fan? It's October. I just thought I'd throw that out
Is
there.
it the pumpkin spice latte of beers?
And it was funny. The reason I bring this up is the article that you wrote recently for us that is titled 38 St. Louis Beers for Fall That Don't Taste Like Pumpkin. When you put that out there, it just made me laugh. And I thought, this is really good because there's a lot of people that love these and a lot of people that run for the hills when they see them.
Feels like it's touching a nerve.
I don't dislike pumpkin. I don't dislike pumpkin beers, but they become overburdensome on my palate. And I do think that there are a lot of beers for fall that get swept under the rug, so to speak, because of the dominance of pumpkin in the months of September and October. There are some great ones. O'Fallon made one of the king beers, the pumpkin ale, and then Urban Chestnut brought it back, and great. And then there's variants to that, but there's vanilla pumpkin. There's all sorts of great stuff. And for a lot of people, they are the beers of fall. I just thought for this particular fall, let's point out some of the other things that people are drinking. And I really tried to expand my own fall horizons by introducing more sours into the fall experience. And I think if you read the article, it's really well balanced.
It's really good.
And oatmeal's in there too. And I would be hazard to say that oatmeal is a fall flavor for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just love a good oatmeal stout. I really do. And I did bring stouts back. Stouts are to me a winter beer. I call winter warmers, but I did want to start them a little early in my fall beer repertoire, but those oatmeal stouts. And I was saddened to learn that some great beers do go away. I learned this week that Four Hands, it got rid of their iron cast oatmeal stout.
Oh.
I don't know why yet, but it could be that just wasn't selling. But people should not sleep on oatmeal stouts. If you get a chance to find a good one, jump on it because they really are a delightful fall flavor. And they're easier to drink than a heavier bourbon barreled stout. Those are really heavy winter beers. A Guinness is more of a fall stout to me, one that is very popular. But even Citywide, the beer I was just referring to, has now jumped. Four Hands has put the Citywide brand on a stout. It's not a heavy stout. It's a lighter stout, very sessionable. There's that word again. It means they're not heavy alcohol, so you can have multiple beers in a sitting. And sometimes if you're watching a game, you want to have more than 2 beers, but some of these 14% ABVs are going to wear you out, and you're going to have one, and you're not going to be able to drive home. So you have to plan it differently. So these sessionable stouts are becoming even more popular in the fall.
Tell me about the sour beers. You said that's defining your autumn. What is the deal with sour beers? They seem kind of esoteric to me. Maybe I'm a little nervous about them. I don't know.
It sounds like a beer for the beer aficionado. I don't know that
exactly.
your average beer drinker. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right on that. And I use my wife a lot of times as the barometer of this. She hates IPAs because they're too bitter. And she doesn't care for sours because they're too sour and tart. I mean, let's put it what it is. For me, flavor is where I come at beers now. And sometimes I just can't resist really good flavor. When it came to IPAs, I did get tired of the bitterness, but then the beer industry rescued themselves by coming out with New England style or hazy, which was juicy and fruity. And it changed what I thought of as an IPA. In fact, it just became IPA to me. But then the sours are not for everyone. They are a little beer nerdish, but I think if everyone gave them a shot, you'd find so much more fun with flavor. There are so many good flavors, and we have so many people in town doing them. I'll give a shout out to Modern. My go-to sour is Disco Punch. This beer is just perfect for me, and it has a great fruitiness. It has a great tartness, but it's not going to make you squinch your cheeks. It's not a sweet tart. Well, I guess it is sort of a sweet tart, but it reminds me of not so much the candy, but just a flavor bomb. And then they really explored all sorts of things where there were different kinds of kettle sours and regular sours. And they're just, like I said, a flavor bomb, but it's a style that is so underloved and appreciated that I cannot stop talking about, which is why I brought it into my fall repertoire, because I wanted to get more into them.
And I think all those flavors and all those styles, beer is so incredibly versatile that beer can be for everyone. And that's one thing we're here to talk about today. Let's address beer for the non-beer drinker.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting way to think about it, George, how maybe I drink red wine, but I want to dip my toe into beer. Any suggestions for that? Maybe I like an old fashioned. Maybe I like coffee or Earl Grey tea. Do you have any of these obvious, if you like this, then you will like this?
Yeah, I
sort
think
of
that's a great way
suggestions?
to do it, because that's exactly right. If you like this, drink that.
It's like a good reference point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There are a lot of things. And again, these are the kind of things that just because they're suggested, you may not care for them. But the one that I love the most, because I am an old fashioned guy, the immediate beer that came to my head was Four Hands Madagascar, which doesn't come out a lot. There's an annual party around it. It is a bourbon barrel-aged stout. Now, it's not because it's a bourbon-aged stout that makes it so close. It's just the flavor of it. It does drink like a cocktail in a way.
Wow.
It is so smooth, especially if you get the vanilla one, vanilla and the oak, and it's all about the barreling and the ingredients they put in. But my goodness, it is like sipping a cocktail. Now, these are not sessionable. These are much higher alcohol, so you're going to probably drink one of these and be done. But that is a really good example. I would say for the red wine drinker, I would recommend a Radler. It's actually designed for bicycle riders. Urban Chestnut has a couple different flavors, grapefruit and tangerine, I believe. And they have the acidity of a wine, some wines, and they drink smooth like a wine. So a Radler or any of the popular seltzers right now would also double. If you're a rosé drinker, a seltzer is a very natural go-to. But there's probably a comparison drink for almost anybody. I would also say, even for coffee drinkers, Schlafly's Coffee Stout is one of my core beers. It is a perfectly balanced beer that if you're a coffee lover, you will find a real home there. And then, of course, there is also possibly the most popular St. Louis coffee beer. It's Perennial Sump, which is a partnership going on, I think, 10 years with the Sump Coffee House in South City. People line up for this beer. It is in a tall bottle. It's not inexpensive anymore, but it is one of those popular beers in St. Louis annually when it does come out.
Is there a beer for the tea drinker?
Actually, I went back and forth on this one. Yes, I think so. And I hope people will try this. And if you don't care for it, that's fine. But there's this beer made in South St. Louis at Bluewood called Bananas and Blow. The beer at its core is a Hefeweizen. And the predominant flavor of a Hefeweizen is what I would call a lemon and a clover. I don't know how else to describe it to you, but it has that tea-like feel to it. It's like a flavor underlaced, and the clove is not very heavy. You can overclove a Hefeweizen, but this beer is perfectly balanced. And that's another thing that most people don't talk about is balance. Really solid beer. And I think if you're a tea drinker or a non-coffee drinker, non-beer drinker, this would be a gateway into beer that I think you'd be pleased with on the palate.
So fall is a time for ciders. People are drinking ciders, hot ciders, cold ciders. Aren't there beers that reference cider in a way?
I would go with more on the sweet side. There are a bunch of beers, especially this time of year. Most of the Oktoberfest beers, including my favorite, Urban Just Nuts O-Cats, is going to lean into the sweetness.
Which I'm drinking right now, by the
Ooh,
way. Thank you very
delicious.
much.
Cheers.
So the sweetness of the cider, you're going to find in your Oktoberfest lagers, but you're also going to find it in your browns. We did mention Civil Life's American Brown. It's not overly sweet, but it has a sweetness that is so pleasing and very crushable, sessionable, I should say. And it'll give you the same after feel of the sweetness that you must be looking for if you're drinking the ciders.
A lot of people drink spritzes and these kind of seltzery cocktails. Is there anything that appeals to a spritz lover?
My wife is a spritz lover, and the beer that she leans into is Second Shift's Technical Ecstasy. This beer is very clean, but in like a lot of clean beers, it will have a flora bouquet that opens it up. Hibiscus Wit is another that they make
Ooh.
that is just, again, sweet, but not overly sweet. And these two beers, both from Second Shift, really will answer that spritzer love. There's nice carbonation in it too, so it has that spritzer feel on the back of your tongue. So those two beers I would really highly recommend if you're a spritzer lover.
I mean, you could go all the way. You can get really sweet and really desserty with beer. How about if you like peanut butter cups? Is there a peanut butter beer out there? I bet there is.
There are several. I'll go
Wow.
ahead and mention three right off the top. Absence of Light from Four Hands is probably the king. It's actually in its own way becoming its own Bud Light status as far as peanut beers. Narrow Gauge has a peanut butter stout, which I think is just premier. And then it's a little bit of a departure from the chocolate and the peanut butter, but Old Bakery's Carrot Cake Stout. This,
Ooh.
what we mostly call a pastry stout, you may be scared of just the name carrot cake,
I am.
but don't
Right.
be.
For
It is-
sure.
I tried it, and it was, I think, the beer of my year 2022.
Oh.
It is fantastic. Now, it's also a bigger beer. So meaning is that alcohol is a little higher and it fills you up. So it was more like a meal and not one of those beers you can have multiple cans of. And it's back. It's a seasonal. It's not all around all year long, but that beer is back, and I highly recommend that. So there's lots of flavor profiles when it comes to these heavy stouts. Peanut butter is big. In fact, there's one more that I'll bring up. Four Hands has one called Fat Elvis, which
Big
is
ass.
sort of a peanut butter and banana. Not for me, but it is back. And that's what this season is. You bring back these fun beers and you try them, you like them, and maybe have another one. But if you don't, at least you gave it a shot.
If you're going to a football game, a tailgate, and you know there's going to be things thrown on the grill, some bratwurst, what kind of beer pairs well with that? Maybe a sessionable beer because you might have one or two.
I'm going to go right back to clean beer. I just think that when I'm eating and lagers, and most like in this time of year, these Oktoberfest, some of the better ones that I've really enjoyed, Main and Mill down in Festus makes a really tremendous, it's called Oktoberfestus. It's a delightful beer. But again, O-Cats from Urban Chestnut. Stubborn German is the only St. Louis area brewery that has an Oktoberfest beer year round. So do not sleep on Stubborn German. There's a really beautiful beer made by Old Bridgeview out of Washington, Missouri in partnership with Deep Sleep Brewing. So these two breweries come together every year and create Oktoberfest. It's a beautiful beer, and it's really only available at both of their breweries. And a lot of these things you'd have to go to the breweries to get. They're not all distributing, but do not sleep on trying to find a new Oktoberfest every season.
So I have to ask you about hemp seltzers. This is something that's just fascinating. Is it hemp? Is it THC? Is it CBD? And I think it's fascinating because a lot of people are saying the reason people aren't drinking beer is because they're smoking weed. So I guess that's a two-part question. Are breweries seeing people drink less because of legalization of recreational marijuana? And what is up with these seltzers? Like, what are they made with? What's the deal?
It's pretty mystifying, really,
Yeah.
to the common man, I think.
It is mystifying. The answer to the question that I've asked breweries is that the moment they are feeling that the customer base is getting more engaged in over-the-counter marijuana, all the different letter combinations that you could throw at me. But they are not yet seeing the liquid versions of them cutting into their market. But I would tell you that that is coming. Even in St. Louis, recently we wrote in St. Louis Magazine how Well-Being had been purchased by Kratom, the local company. And now what we've just seen is the introduction of their first hemp/THC/cannabis beverages. And I really will say that we're going to have to do some more learning about them. And the beer industry, I think, is already looking at it the same way they looked at distilling. You have a lot of breweries who got into distilling not too long ago. And I think you're going to start seeing collaborations maybe starting first, especially with Well-Being being as large as it is in the country and being St. Louis based, and then possibly breweries moving into this world on their own. But the consumer needs to be educated first.
I think this all goes to show that there really is something for everybody. And I'm just amazed that you had all this information off the top of your head, no notes. I just wind you up and you go. Are there any concluding thoughts? I want to say St. Louis is still a great beer city. Is that fair? I mean, I'm loading the question, but you can disagree with me or agree.
I won't disagree. In fact, I'm working on a story right now. There was a national magazine that listed the 15 best beer cities, and St. Louis was not on the list. And so I am going to counter them. I think what's actually gotten lost is our beer history. I think people have, especially when InBev took over Anheuser-Busch, and you didn't hear those commercials that said Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis, Missouri on the radio. I think we are not considered the beer capital of America the way we used to be. And I would say to you that a lot of states and cities have come to a big, giant beer reckoning, Portland being one, Grand Rapids of all cities is a really great beer town. But I think St. Louis is exactly where it always has been, a great beer town. I think when it comes to the number of breweries, which are in the high 50s, it's evolving clearly as some are opening and some are closing, is still very, very strong. The state of the union of St. Louis beer is very strong, I'll say. But I do think we are underrated when it now comes to how the national beer fans look at us. But I do suspect that with what I consider a growing beer tourism industry, that St. Louis will redeem itself.
Thank you, Jordan, for joining us today. It's been informative. It's been enlightening. I think we all learned something. So thank you, thank you, thank you. But now it's on to something a little less pleasant and something that Jordan Palmer isn't, by the way. We're going to talk about beer snobs. And by the way, we don't like them. You know, the people who sneer at mainstream macro brews, the light lagers that most Americans prefer. I love a well-balanced IPA as much as the next guy, but there are times when nothing tastes better than a cold light lager.
George, you're talking to someone who loves High Life. I choose to drink High Life.
The colder, the better, right? Against all,
Of course.
yeah, everything you shouldn't do.
You drink it on a float trip. You drink it in the shower after you've been doing some yard work, your beer shower. You're not drinking an IPA for a beer shower. You're drinking a Highlight or a Busch or something delicious like that. Maybe grilling pork steak.
A hot day at the beach, Busch Stadium on a sunny Sunday afternoon. That's just what you want. And there is a time, there is a place for craft beers and for mainstream basic beers. So back off, beer snobs. Simple can be sublime, right? Am I right here?
I totally agree. I put them in the category of the people who look down their nose on me when I ask for cream in my coffee. You know, I'm going to drink what I want to drink.
Lighten up. That's our message today. Thank you for listening to Arch Eats. Be sure to follow us and share with your friends. We put out new episodes every other week where you'll always see links in the show notes for everything you heard about today. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow along on Instagram at St. Louis Mag and at George Mahey and Cheryl A. Bear.
If you loved what you heard, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And for more of the freshest coverage on the local restaurant and culinary scene, subscribe to our dining newsletters.
Best dishes, and see you next time.
Arch Eats is a production of St. Louis Magazine. Audio editing by Brendan Shanahan and produced by Kylie Green Lemoyne.